you know, you don't say, oh, so what reproductive organs do you have? Like, you just don't do that. I mean, if you do that, tell me, because, yeah, explain why. Hi guys, yay! I have to say, on a little side note, one thing that has really gotten me through social media, despite the shitstorm that it's turned into, is the community on social media. So thank you for that. If this is your first time tuning in, hi, I'm Kez. There's some unicorns. Here's another unicorn. Together that makes Kez and Unicorn. This featured unicorn here today is called Proudsicorn. I know, you'd think I made this up, but I called her Proudsicorn like 4 years ago. She's probably one of my oldest unicorns, actually.
I'm a unicorn!
Anyway, if you missed the video and you wanna see it, then I did a little get ready with me. I talked about my first Pride Parade experience and just my general thoughts on the LGBTQ+ community and how it's developed over the last 10 years. So check that one out. I'll add a card up here somewhere. Anyway, and this is yeah, this is what it is. It's what it is. It's heavy. It's right. So, today I actually want to do something a little bit different. So I wanted to really talk about Liz Truss. I really wanted to talk about Liz Truss and how, like, the Gender Recognition Act reform, like the UK's done like a massive U-turn on it, and how that's going to affect various people.
Lauren was supposed to do a paper on why government matters. This is what she wrote.
It doesn't. Well said.
But you know, I realized the topic itself is kind of boring. Like, if you genuinely just want to know the information, like it's fine. It's interesting information, but it's just a little bit not quite right for me, and a large reason is because of the fact that I am not a member of the LGBTQ+ community. I am a heterosexual cis female, but I am an ally of the trans community, the LGBTQ community, and even if my platform's small, I want to use it to talk about things that I want to talk about. Growing up, being a gymnast and then going to drama school and then working in musical theatre, I spent a lot of my life with a bunch of incredibly diverse people. So to me, it's always been just a person is a person. I talk a bit more about that in videos, so do go check it out. But I came across an article. Now I'm gonna and yes, this is what we would call decora fashion, okay? It's my first attempt. I'm proud of it. I did something and I'm recognizing that I'm proud, because being someone with BPD, I really struggle to ever be proud of anything that I do. So we're gonna be proud on this channel, at least for today, okay?
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
Anyway, I came across this article. Now this is from December, but it is very relevant, especially considering the US and what they're planning to do. Oh, by the way, look at the boots. You can't really see the boots. There they are. Yeah, me holding that leg up is really, really painful. Anyway, right. So, with the US deciding to, you know, do some non-trans friendly things, and the UK deciding to do a big U-turn on the Gender Recognition Act, we got what we got. So if you're not really familiar, I'm going to run you through very, very quickly, but unfortunately I have a tendency to talk for hours. Okay, so basically there is a difference between the Gender Recognition Act and the Equalities Act 2010. So the Equalities Act in the UK, the Equalities Act 2010 is basically the act that says that no one can be mistreated based on any a disability, a sexuality, being trans, being a woman, all of these things. It's basically something that says, you know, you cannot discriminate against someone due to, for example, a disability. I've experienced this a lot in my life.
Why?
But in this act, you can exclude certain groups of people if it's for an acceptable reason. And we're going to come back to that in a minute. So the Gender Recognition Act was actually started in 2004. And look, my unicorn, her horn fell off. And I feel like there's a metaphor there. Back to this. Okay, so the Gender Recognition Act came in 2004, and it's actually it's handed down by the Human Rights Act. But there are certain things that the UK is in breach of the Human Rights Act. Basically, at the moment, if you're trans, you have to live as that gender for 2 years, gather lots of medical evidence to provide to show that you are in fact trans, and this causes a lot of problems for people, you know, not being able to change their gender on their birth certificate, someone potentially being asked for ID to then be asked why your gender is different. You know, it's difficult. I would imagine. I always said I thought it was a very unfair thing. And also part of this at the moment, the Gender Recognition Act, one thing that it says is very important is that it's a mental health behavioural disorder and it's a medical disorder, and you have to provide evidence of the surgeries or the medications that you're going to have. So these are some issues, and it also means that you can't start your transition until you're 18. So people wanted to make that lower, and there's some other things, but I'm not really going to talk about any of that, because other than giving you that basic information to give you a starting point of where we're at, I don't really feel that I am the best person to provide this kind of information to you. But what I want to talk about, because I can talk about this, is how this actually affects cis women. So this article that I came across, it says, in brief, why is the GRA, or the Gender Recognition Act, reform bad for women, and why should you care? Like, straight away, that title, it's just like, so we're... Have I got a clip falling out? I have. There we go. It's not falling out anymore. Magic. Right. Just from that headline, you can tell this is gonna be some shit here. I'm not happy with it. I can already tell that this is going to have a negative bias.
Oh my god, I can't believe it!
So I read like the first couple of paragraphs of it and threw my phone across the room. I mean, not really, but figuratively speaking. Yeah, that. This was, as I said, back in December, and it's about Scotland, but it is still relevant. One of the only differences between Scottish law and English law when it comes to gender recognition is that currently in England or Wales, if you want to change your gender on your birth certificate or whatever, you actually have to have approval by your spouse if you are married. In Scotland, you don't. We are going to be focusing very much on how this affects cis women and the Equalities Act 2010, and the fact that you are allowed under the 2010 Equalities Act to exclude certain people. That's what you need to hold on to right now. This week, the Scottish Government launched its second public consultation on reform of the Gender Recognition Act, with a draft bill that would allow anyone from age 16 to change the sex they were born on their certificate. No doctors, no surgery, no checks, just sign a form.
You're getting your wishes, so sit down!
I'm just going to say bravo to that. I don't think people should have to prove anything. I don't really see why it's anyone else's business, and to stop someone from doing it just seems mean. I mean, Kez, that's me, remember? Hi, I'm Kez. Yeah, that's me, I'm Kez.
Stop it. Get some help.
That's not the name I was born with.
Oh my god!
But it is my legal name. I changed it by a depot. It cost me 50 quid. I signed a couple of forms. That's it. It's really, really easy to change your name. Most people don't know. I'm actually thinking of doing a video where I talk a bit more about that in relation to my mental health, so subscribe for that. Anyway, we're told time and again not to worry about it. This will have no impact on women's sex-based rights. There's no impact on privacy, safety, or fairness for women and girls. They are wrong. This short article explains why. Oh, do enlighten me, short article. GRA reform is fundamentally about language capture and a woman's ability to discuss and uphold her sex-based rights. It started out as transgender people simply asking to be protected from being treated unfairly because they are transgender. Women should respect someone's gender identity by treating a man as if he were a woman.
Why are we still here?
Why is this article making out that other people have the right, people that don't know you? It's up to them as to whether they want to treat you as the gender that you identify as. It's nothing to do with you.
You have no choice in this.
There. Okay. It was a courtesy, a kindness extended to people who suffered from gender dysphoria. Oh yes. Bravo! Bravo, people, for caring about beautiful. That was sarcasm. We all know that trans people aren't literally the sex they identify as. I can't.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
I'm back. Plus, I just wanted to stand in these boots and pretend I was like a normal height for 2 minutes. It's nice. I feel tall. I think with these shoes on, I'm about 5'5", maybe? That's what you get when you're 4'11". It's great. Gymnastics does stunt your growth. Anyway, we all know that trans people aren't literally the sex they identify as. It was simply polite to use preferred pronouns and repeat the platitude that trans women are women. Yeah. This is actually kind of interesting. Part of me wants to direct you to a certain channel, which is this YouTuber is one of my favourite YouTubers. She is an Australian American. She is a Trump supporter. Stay with me for a second, right? I hate Trump. And pretty much everything he stands for. But for some reason, I love her. You know why? Because you can disagree with someone's view on something, but still think they're a cool person. And I still think that she is fundamentally a good person. She talks a lot about the other argument, the other side to what I'm about to say. She's quite a big channel. Her name's Sydney Watson. I will link a video of hers down below. Don't like hate or anything. Only go there if you really are interested in seeing the other side, because she does a really good job in researching her argument and then presenting the facts and the opinions, and they're great. And I'm a fan. Even though I disagree with a lot of stuff she says, I do also agree with some of the stuff she said. But I guess I would probably be considered like a liberal centralist person. Anyway, back to the article. So yes, let's repeat the platitude that trans women are women. But this has fundamentally changed. It is no longer enough to treat a man as if he was a woman. To respect his gender identity, we must now consider him an actual woman. What? I know, did you hear that? Bitch! That's not getting repeated. This means we must change the definition of woman to include two types of women: trans women and cis women. Okay. We now see the use of cis and trans embedded within the Guardian style guide. It is now routine to see politicians publicly asserting in interviews that trans women are women. This week, we've seen a UK Employment Tribunal judge rule that requiring people to refer to trans women as women is justified to avoid harassment or offence to trans people. The belief that biological sex is immutable was considered to be not worthy of respect in a democratic society. Okay, so let's stop here for a second. Let's unpack some of this. So basically what this article is saying is that basically that cis women have become a subset of women, I guess, is where they're going with this. The idea that a man can be accepted as a woman and has to be accepted as a woman, this person seems to take issue with that. I am going to say I do take issue with certain things. I think, for example, having a 3-year-old say that they're a different gender than the sex of the body, I think that child is too young to really understand what they're doing, and I think that there's a point where in the US parents are actually having their children taken away because they refuse to let the child transition. A person needs to get to an age where they fully understand what they're saying, because we don't want to see people detransitioning. I'm not saying that many are. A lot of arguments say that a lot of people detransition, when I think in the grand scheme of things it's not very many people. But I don't think it's right for a child of 3 to be able to say, hey, I'm the wrong gender. Because, like, I think at the age of 3 you're more like sleepy, hungry, need cuddles, snore, laugh, kiss, eat, cuddles, sleep, that type of thing. So, and also the trans women and the prison system, there is a big argument there, and I think generally it's I think the only issue that I can take is that there are very few, but there are some people that we're seeing come forward as trans, and I'm talking about men in prisons who come forward as trans so that they can be moved to female prisons. And the question there is always, if it is justified and that person has gender dysphoria and does identify as that gender, then I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. But I think that it does need to be considered carefully and closely. There was actually a story of someone, I'll see if I can find the link to it, but it was about how someone, I think it was in Canada, they went to prison as a male, and they say they gender identify now as a woman, and they were actually released, and they didn't even have to serve all of the time for the crime they committed. And I think they committed like murder, it wasn't just a little crime, and they were like, no, we're releasing this person because they did it because they were a man and now they're a woman. And it's like, well, that's fine, but you still have to own your shit, you know what I mean? Okay, so why does this matter? It matters because it means that there are male women and female women now. Some of us are women by virtue of birth and our sexed body, and some of us are women by virtue of declaring a gender identity despite our sexed body. I fail to see the problem here. If anyone knows what the problem is, tell me down below, because I don't see the problem with that. Women have now become a subset of their own class. Wow, did I call that a what? It matters because the word woman is no longer associated with a person's sex. It matters because women's rights are no longer about sex-based oppression. We are cis women now. Being female is just a niche issue. Yeah. Being female is just a niche issue peculiar to us. It's no longer center stage when it comes to talking about women's issues. In fact, it is actively discouraged and considered exclusionary, and in a minute we'll move on to that point. That is a key point for what I want to say here. This has had a profound and damaging effect on how women talk about our sex-based rights. Wholesale changes in social convention mean that many of the words used by women to discuss sex-based oppression are now off limits. This makes even the most respectful conversations about how we fairly balance rights based on sex and rights based on gender identity fraught with difficulties and tension. We have lost the word woman. The only words that we are still allowed to use without sanction is male and female. They must not be given away. Even now, spurious scientific arguments and unfair accusations of transphobia are frequently used to muddy the meaning and use of these most basic words to describe someone's sex. We are already starting to see Twitter impose sanctions for using male and female. Fair Play for Women was temporarily suspended for hateful conduct for using the word male.
Valar Morghulis. Yes, all men must die. But we are not men.
We successfully appealed, and Twitter admitted their mistake because under current UK law, it is still accurate to state that most trans women are the male sex. Indeed, the Equality and Human Rights Commission has recently clarified this legal position. Fair Play for Women has also been recently accused of transphobic abuse by a newspaper for describing a transgender cricketer as male, despite this being legally accurate and relevant to discussions about fairness and safety in sport. We are currently pursuing a complaint with the independent regulators IPSO to protect the free use of the words male and female. But most shocking of all has been the increasing pressure not to use the words male and female in official policy development meetings. As a policy stakeholder invited to represent the sex-based rights of women and girls both in the UK and internationally, we respectfully refuse. We use sex-based language not to be rude, but because gender identity is not the same characteristic as sex. Being able to acknowledge and identify the male and female sex is fundamental to the theory and practice of sex-based rights for women and girls. GRA reform fatally undermines the sex-based rights of women and girls.
Sure, Jan.
It is no longer enough to treat a man as if he is a woman. It is no longer enough to consider all trans women to be a type of woman. It is now being demanded that all trans women are literally female too. Trans women no longer want to be trans women. They want to be female and for their trans history to be secret. They want to be identical to the cis women, indistinguishable from us. Because GRA reform won't just allow every trans person to change the sex they were born on their birth certificate, it will also become impossible to confirm it was ever changed. On paper, a trans woman's maleness will have been totally erased.
I don't know what's wrong with you. But your ego is pissing me off. You think you're the shit.
Okay, so again, I don't really see the issue here. Like, if someone is born into a body that is of the opposing sex of their gender and they want to change their body in order to feel happier and more comfortable with themselves, I don't see why that's really anyone else's business, and I don't see why this person is acting like it's the end of the world for cis women. I really don't see what the issue is here. Like, how about it's no one's damn business if someone changes it or not? Why would you? I mean, it's not like an employer is gonna be like, oh, you've applied for a job here, and then do some trace to check your birth certificate and see if you've changed your gender on your birth certificate. I mean, that would be discrimination anyway under the Equalities Act 2010. But yeah, it's no one's damn business. Yeah, anyway. How will campaigners, policymakers, or journalists be able to do their job when we are all obliged to name someone born male with a male body and male genitals as being the female sex?
I'm sorry, are you from the past?
How can we protect single-sex spaces in services when we can no longer know or say who was born male or female? How can a female-only space ever be guaranteed to be male-free when we can no longer acknowledge that trans women are actually the male sex? How will you be able to express your legitimate concerns if you can no longer say things like, I don't want a trans woman to share a changing room with my daughter because that person is male, or I don't want a trans woman to perform a cervical smear on me because that person is male, or I don't want my elderly mother to be washed and dressed by a trans woman at the care home because that person is male, or I don't think it's fair or safe for my daughter to play rugby against a team that fields a trans woman because that person is male. Who says things like that? Seriously, tell me, because I don't know. Okay, here's my thing. I actually got into a little bit of a disagreement. It was in some Facebook community group, and they were talking about the fact that I think it was Marks and Spencer's, which is a department store in the UK, if you don't know, were looking to change the changing rooms from female and male to just whichever gender you identify as, you can use the changing room that you want to use. And people were getting very riled up about this. This was months ago, by the way, but I remember it because I just remember being like, who cares? Number one, it's not like you go into a changing room and there's no privacy. You know, you still have a little room with a door or a curtain, so I don't really see the problem there. And with toilets, you get mixed toilets, so what's the problem? And there's these people that say,
oh, but you know, predatory men will use it to assault women or abuse women.
Or whatever. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think people are going to go through so much effort just to do something that they can do anyway. Like, no offense, but if a male predator wants to find a woman to assault, they will just wait until they can sneak into a changing room and do it. There is no... If someone's going to commit a crime, it's shitty behavior and it's inexcusable, but if someone is going to commit a crime, they're going to find a way to commit the crime. So it really makes no difference, in my opinion, to anything. Also, if someone identifies as a female, then I welcome them with open arms. Come and use the same changing rooms as me. Use the same bathrooms as me. Let's have fun when we're in nightclubs getting drunk and we're talking about random...
Oh my god! I didn't know I'd be at the same party as Beyonce. Jesus! Is it even legal to look that pretty?
Stuff that you talk about in ladies' bathrooms.
Oh, your makeup's kind of smudged. Here, baby. Here, bestie. This is what best friends do for each other. Girls gotta stick together, right? Jesus Christ. You can just have it. I mean, you don't even need makeup to begin with, but from me to you, that's what best friends do.
When you're not stuck in quarantine.
Best friends also give each other these for when you need to hold your hair back when you're puking. I already did it, so I don't need it. Don't let anyone dull your freaking sparkle. I'm having a party, you're invited. And my wedding, you're the maid of honor. Love you.
Like, I don't see an issue with this, and this is the main point that I wanted to talk about here, because as a cis woman, this is something that I feel strongly about. And this group of people that I spoke to, I mean, they were ripping at me. Like, I was trying to explain what I've just said to you by saying I don't see what the real problem is, and I don't really understand the problem with trans women or trans men being treated as equal. And these women, I understand, don't get me wrong, I do understand that parents could feel very differently to me, and I do understand that most of the people that were ripping into me in this group were very much saying that they were scared about their children being assaulted. But I think one thing that we have to remember is that 2020 has been a fucking shit show. But the media has decided to sensationalize pretty much everything that it can. We see it with things like dissociative identity disorder and people assuming that everyone that has DID is a serial killer. And we see this with trans, or when it comes to situations, for example, like the media will report on Jessica Yaniv, for example, a trans person who was a predator. Everyone will hear about that. People don't hear about all of the trans people who are not predators, who are not breaking the law, who are not criminals, who are just living their lives, trying to live their lives as happily as they can for themselves and for their loved ones.
I just have a lot of feelings.
And we don't hear about those people. And so I wanted to talk about this because as a cis woman, I have no problems whatsoever accepting a trans woman as the same as me. Yes, there are things that I think people struggle with, for example, with the idea of female hygiene products, changing the way that they are sold and the way that they're described, as they are for any person who experiences, periods, for example, and that could be a trans man. So there was a lot of heated arguments over this subject as well. I think Always lost their Venus sponsorship, which they've had forever, because they were changing it so that they were more inclusive of trans men who still menstruate, and this was a whole big issue as well. And yes, for a time I even was a bit like, I don't really understand why things that are designed for women, why so much has to change, why there has to be so many pronouns, why there has to be such a massive change in our society. But as someone that studied anthropology, I've always been really interested in community and in societies, and to me, I have decided to educate myself on the subject. And at the end of the day, if you come to me as a woman, I don't care what reproductive organs you have. makes no difference to me. The thought of considering someone who it just doesn't matter to me in any way. I don't care. And I think that's something that is a very big difference between generations.
Okay, boomer.
And I think now coming up, you know, we're going to see more and more people feeling able to be honest about their sexuality, being able to be honest about gender dysphoria, being able to any of these things. And I actually think that what that could mean is essentially is that we will get to a point where the LGBTQ plus community kind of won't exist anymore, because it will just be normal.
What?
You know, like, not to say that LGBTQ isn't normal, but I mean, it will just be. They won't need to say, oh, there's this group of people that have a different sexuality or suffer from gender dysphoria or anything like that. And more people will probably find their sexualities changing, because when you meet someone, I'm hoping that in, you know, a few years, it could be decades, but it will get to a point where you meet someone and you genuinely like that person for who that person is. You don't ask, you know, it's not like if you meet someone and they're wearing a dress, you know, you don't say, oh, so what reproductive organs do you have? Like, you just don't do that. I mean, if you do that, tell me, because yeah, explain why. But you just don't do that type of thing. And as I said, I do understand the concern for having children, having a child that has gender dysphoria. I do think that children under the age of 16 should have to go through, you know, therapy. They should have to see psychologists. They should have to do all this. I think anyone that is suffering from gender dysphoria or anything, regardless of what they decide to do with their own body, they should also have counselling. In fact, I kind of think everyone should have counselling at this point, because there's mental illnesses everywhere. So I do think that should happen. I don't think it should be just as easy as dropping by and being like, oh yeah, give me them puberty blockers. Oh, give me those hormones. Yeah, I don't think it should be that easy. I do think that you should have to, you know, have discussion.
This is for if you are going to change your body and transition. I don't think there should be such strict rules around changing your gender on birth certificates, etc. I think when it comes to transitioning, therapy should be an important aspect of that to ensure the person knows exactly what it means, and we can ensure people don't transition without fully understanding what that might mean for fertility and other physical changes, as well as for their lived experience.
And I think, unfortunately, this is another example of the media sensationalizing.
No! God, please, no!
The bad, the dangerous.
Drama.
Because it gets views and clicks, it sells. But to me, that's not ethical journalism, and it's not really an accurate representation of the world that we're living in. So, yeah. I could keep talking about this subject for ages, but I'm not going to. But I did just want to say, as a cis woman, this is my view, and I would happily welcome anyone into my life, regardless of gender or reproductive systems or anything like that, because I don't see why it's anyone's business. But the media needs to stop sensationalizing the bad without showing us the good. I mean, it takes me back to my Gabby Hanna video where I talked about how drama channels, they will be straight there to talk about when someone messes up, but when someone does something good, cricket. And I think as a society, it's very easy to focus on the negative, to focus on the difficult, the bad. And I think sometimes it's just nice to remember that the world isn't just negative. It feels like it. Trust me, I have way more mental health issues than any person should have. I did have a very difficult and traumatic childhood. I'll link up here to a sort of intro into me, if you like. But you know, I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life. I've experienced a lot of loss, assault, abuse. It's all there. and I struggle a lot with life. You know, I have suicidal thoughts, I self-harm, I have an eating disorder, I have a ton of issues. But sometimes it's important to celebrate the good. And I think that's something that I really wanted to do with this video. I just wanted to celebrate the good in people, the people that brighten up Twitter, who are so happy to just come out and say who they are. And I think unfortunately a lot of people still aren't comfortable enough to do that, and people hide behind things. And I mean, I have borderline personality disorder and I don't know who the fuck I am. Like, genuinely. I feel like a different person each and every day. But today, while this article made me really, really angry because it just focusing on, I mean, it's just so entitled, you know, to think that it's up to me or up to you to decide that person's gender. It's up to you if you want to be understanding of that person's feelings. I mean, yeah, that's basically true in life, but if you're not going to be understanding of anyone's feelings, then you're basically a sociopath, and that's kind of a problem. Good job! You know, just treat people as people, meet them for who they are, and stop listening to horror stories. Educate yourself on the subjects that you're worried about, so that you'll see that you shouldn't believe everything the media tells you. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll be really interested, really keen to hear your thoughts on this topic and how you feel about the Gender Recognition Act. What does that mean for you or your friends or your family or someone you know? And you know, how strongly do you feel about it? Oh my god, I don't really like that. So where's yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you want to come and find me on Twitter for lots of hot takes, basically what I do, you can come and join me on Twitter. If you want to join me on Instagram, where I like to post fun looks like this, and I will be back on there soon, I promise. But I like to post, I usually post like every day, every other day, but mental health causes social media anxiety and issues, and it's just, I'm getting there, okay? Trust me, I'm getting there. I'm making videos again. I'm doing good. So do join me on Instagram as well. I'm kezandunicorns, exactly the same as I am on here. So it's really easy to find me. Like, you have no excuse, really. And if you sat through this entire video, you know, you really might as well just click subscribe. I need support. I need help in growing. I want to use this platform for good, and I do a lot of stuff on this channel. I do wig reviews. I have a series called Makeup and Mental Health Mondays. It's not every Monday, but it's going to be a regular thing, where I sit down and talk about a specific mental health topic that's on my head and in my head. Yeah, in my head. And I do my makeup at the same time, so that's fun. I do social commentary pieces, and I have a very strong bias on mental health, even in those cases, because it's something that I relate to a lot. I also give kind of like, I don't know, I talk a lot about myself, my life, just in case anyone can relate. And yeah, I do fashion-y stuff and wiggy stuff. And cosplays and stuff. So yeah, subscribe. It's a fun time, I hope, maybe. Yeah. I also am going to be doing lives fairly regularly, I think, is my plan. So press that subscribe button, press the bell. You'll get notified when I drop a new video, when I go live, whatever. We can chat. Join me on socials and let me know your thoughts down below on what you think of this topic. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. And yeah, I will see you very, very soon in like my next video, which should be out very, very soon. Thank you, Proudsicorn, for being here and showing us the ways of your wonderful awesomeness. She's beautiful. And I'll say arigatou gozaimasu. And keep on, as always, unicorning. Proudly corning. Forget I said that. Bye!